We now welcome CBS News congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes and our senior political editor Steve Chaggaris to discuss more of the goings-on. And Nancy, again, Republicans adjourn the House in the middle of the night. Any word then on how long this continues, as folks don't officially have to be back until July 5th?
No, I mean, publicly Democrats are saying we're in it for the long haul, we're not going anywhere, but there are some practical concerns here. As you point out, the House is now adjourned for nearly 2 weeks. So what are Democrats planning to do? Are they going to occupy the House floor that entire time, basically show up in shifts to sit there? And what exactly will that accomplish? That's what they're going to be discussing in a meeting in House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer's office in a little bit, basically figuring out what the end game is, because on one hand, they don't want to give up and pack it in without getting something tangible in return, but on the other hand, they don't essentially want to waste a whole bunch of time over a holiday recess when a lot of people aren't even paying attention.
It does, Steve, divide this perhaps between the idea of strategy and the idea of real impact. In fact, Democrats began soliciting donations in the middle of the night as well, using the sit-in as a reason. We heard from Minority Whip Hoyer, in fact, earlier as he defended the move. Let's take a listen.
If the politics of this issue were bad for us, we wouldn't be able to raise funds on this issue, because people wouldn't agree with us and they wouldn't say they wouldn't want to support us. I'm not saying the two ought to go hand in hand. What I am saying is that it is obvious that when people support a candidate robustly and believe in the issues they put forward, we've seen that with Bernie Sanders. We've seen it not so much with Donald Trump, because he doesn't raise money in the traditional sense. People contribute. They contribute in small sums, medium sums, sometimes large sums. But that's not the issue here about what the campaign is doing. The issue here is to make America safer. We believe these two bills, and we believe the American public overwhelmingly agree that strengthening the oversight of people who want to buy guns, look at their backgrounds, look at their mental health, look at the fact that they may have committed a crime or been involved in domestic violence, and be restrained in the selling of them of weapons that can kill people very quickly.
Steve, this is perhaps as partisan as politics can get. He mentioned the polls. Any number of polls show that roughly 90% of Americans believe in more profound background checks to purchase weapons. Then what do you make then of the strategy here of tying fundraising to these efforts?
Well, I do want to point out, just since yesterday afternoon, I've received 9 emails from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee soliciting money off the sit-in specifically. So clearly there's a political angle to this. Obviously, Democrats feel very strongly about this issue and they want it voted on the House floor. But on the political side, we are in an election year. There are elections in November for the House, for the Senate, for President. And traditionally, gun control is not an issue that is at the top of voters' minds. If you look at the top issues for Americans this year especially, it's the economy, it's jobs, it's the way the government operates in Washington. But in terms of gun control, there was a Gallup poll that polls this question every month, and every month gun control comes in at 1% as the most important issue for Americans. And so I think what Democrats are trying to do here is twofold. One, and they're not going to get their vote. They're in the minority in the House. But they're going to try to energize voters enough to, A, give them enough money to compete in races, in House races especially this fall, to try to take over the House in the fall. And then if they take over the House, then they can move their own gun control legislation when they're the majority. And secondly, they're trying to make gun control a more important issue at the forefront of voters' minds. It traditionally, as I said, is not one of the top issues for voters. Shining the light on it now, they're hoping it's going to be this fall.
Nancy, protecting the House majority is something that Paul Ryan, in speaking to the various comments of Donald Trump just in the last couple of weeks, has invoked time and again. To that end, Speaker Ryan also has called this sit-in a publicity stunt. But the context of this coming as it does, again, after the filibuster we saw in the Senate and the 4 failed amendments, 2 from each side of the aisle, what is the harm, at least from the Republican side and perspective, of bringing this to a vote?
Well, they say that if they were to allow a vote, which Democrats know would fail, that it basically would give Democrats a talking point, because then they could run ads against every single Republican in Congress saying, look at this Republican who is against common sense gun control legislation that the majority of Americans support. They are out of touch. They are out of the mainstream. And beyond that, Speaker Ryan believes that Democrats shouldn't be rewarded for flagrantly breaking House rules, that if they are able to conduct a sit-in like this and get the vote that they want, what's to stop them from using the same strategy again and again? The problem for Ryan, of course, is that not allowing the vote carries its own risks, because then a lot of people will be asking the same question you just asked, which is, what's the harm of simply holding a vote? It takes 15 minutes, and then win or lose, it's over.
Nancy, very quickly, what happens on July 5th?
Well, that depends a great deal on what Democrats decide in this meeting that's coming up in a couple of hours. Do they decide to sort of stick with this through the duration, carry on some kind of protest through the July 4th recess and pick it back up on July 5th, at which point, they're really going to have put a lot of time and effort into this and will have more leverage? Or do they essentially cut their losses now and come back with a vengeance on the 5th? It remains to be seen.